This is Your Own Best Company, a podcast for people who love to work alone. Hello, everybody. My name is Franklin Taggart, and this is Your Own Best Company, a podcast for people who love working alone. And my guest today is someone that I have only found out about in the past several months. I first heard Danielle Gardner presenting for Tad Hargrave's Marketing for Hippies group probably about 4 or 5 months ago. And she was talking about a new book that she had written called Quiet Marketing. I immediately went and got it. And I just have to say that it's one of the most affirming business books that I have ever read for a guy like me.
Wow.
And so I immediately did a recommendation video about that book. And I followed Dani's YouTube channel to see more and learn more. And I can't be more delighted to have you as a guest. So welcome, Danielle Gardner.
Thank you, Franklin. I'm so pleased to be here. And yeah, I discovered your video about my book. I think I just decided to do a search for quiet marketing or something.
Yeah.
Because I had found stuff before that people had said that I wasn't aware of. And I was like, no way, there's like this video. And I was so chuffed. So yeah, thank you for doing that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I also wanted to mention that Dani works primarily with coaches and facilitators, helping them to simplify their business. And I'm going to add to that I think that one of the things that is an outcome is that they enjoy their business more. I would guess that that's probably a fairly common thing for the people who work with you. Would that be accurate?
Yeah. And of course, we all set out to enjoy our business.
Yeah.
Right? We don't set out to not enjoy them, but I maybe very few people would admit that they're not enjoying it until it gets really bad. But what they might admit is that it's stressful. It's way more stressful than they thought. They didn't really anticipate that. But it doesn't need to be. So
can you just give us a little bit of a snapshot of your own experience of that?
Yeah. So when I started off, things were pretty calm. It's actually interesting to look back because one of the first, I had learned kinesiology, so I was sort of dabbling in that. But when I actually first left my corporate job, I was mainly focused on something called reconnective healing. And I was just getting clients through the practitioner website, right? And honestly, it was the easiest thing in the world. And it was like being in meditation, like with clients. And I do remember going, something's not right. This is too easy.
This should be harder.
Yes. And so, I think the universe went, oh, you want hard? Okay, we'll give you hard. So then, as things progressed, probably the big turning point for me was learning about Facebook groups because I think I don't even think they existed when I very first was sort of, offering my services, but then they came about and I learned about this strategy, it was called the zero cost marketing strategy. So you go, whoa, what's that about? And then it's like, just want to say it might be zero cost financially. It ain't zero cost emotionally, physically, emotionally. Yeah. So, I don't know how much you know about the strategy, Franklin, but the idea is that you got to join, several of these groups. They have themed days. One of those days will be like an offer day. But in order to sort of be able to present an offer, you need to participate on all the other days. And you need to post and you need to comment on others. And so you get caught into this sort of hamster wheel of engagement, engage. And, you don't want to slip through the algorithmic net.
Right.
And so you just keep going. And then what that meant for me is that I was just mentally switched on all the time in my business, from the moment I woke up, to someone commented on that, to, when I went to sleep. And of course that can happen without a Facebook group, but I think I found that it started to trigger, like being in this sort of community group thing. It was sort of like a popularity contest in a way.
Yeah.
And so I think it was ultimately bringing up like stuff for me about that, and almost like there being a shame of a post not doing well or it not getting engagement. And so it was like, very anxiety driven. And it actually did take me, I was involved in that for, maybe the first 3, maybe 4 years, and then realized I needed to pry myself away from it, because I actually had done well. I actually had got a lot of business through that, but there was indeed a cost. So
yeah, the cost was higher than promised.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you found your way more into a coaching role. Can you talk a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah. So this was more as a result of doing, let's see now. Oh, yeah, no, this is what happened. So I was doing kinesiology, reconnective healing, and that led me to something else, which was to do with Akashic record reading, so more intuitive stuff. And so I was focused on that for a bit. And it wasn't quite coaching, but it certainly led to it. So what I found is there were a lot of people coming to me to do this package that I had that were ultimately healers, coaches, all these sort of things that hadn't really stepped up into their own doing their work, as a business or anything like that. They were sort of very much dabbling. And because I was a little bit further down the track, I'd certainly been where they had been. I'd got myself out of corporate, and which that in itself is a big feat, because especially if you're used to like a good income and a company car and blah, 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 it's hard to pull yourself away from that kind of thing. And so I found that through my conversations, they ended up turning to, like about being in business and marketing and different things like that. And so then eventually it's almost like I didn't want to see myself as some sort of marketing mentor or something like that. But eventually I embraced it. And the thing is that I have had this ease with words and language and putting ideas together. And, to me, it took me a while to accept that or acknowledge that was something maybe special, because I just thought it was normal. Like when something comes easy, you're like, it's your problem, just write it.
Everybody can do this.
Yeah. So, then through a few different trainings that I came across, I remember this one training, can't remember what it was, but it was like it was basically saying to me, zero in on your freaking gifts, and, I had to admit that it was all that messaging stuff, but also other aspects of how, I think about business and do business that was my strength. So I sort of like then let go of the other stuff really, and was just helping people who were in those early stages of their business.
Now, do I understand that you did quite a bit of blogging in your own business? So the writing was always a part of it. At some point, you decided that Quiet Marketing needed to be a book. What was that process of deciding that?
Yeah, an interesting one. So, often people had told me, even before I had my own business, you need to write a book. You need to write a book, or whatever I was talking about, and I would think, I just couldn't, because everything I do is pretty concise. I'm like, there's just not a book in that. It was almost like, that's obvious. Like I couldn't fill up a book with something, And then I started to entertain it again as a bit of a business strategy, I guess. And then also really just, I guess, beyond the business strategy, then I was just thinking, oh gosh, you know what? I just want people to have these basic ideas before they work with me, because I don't want to be going over these, again. And in general, I think it would just be helpful for people. So that was in the background. But really, to be honest, what kind of got me going was I noticed a few people, one in particular that I know, that I felt like they were trying to claim, not claim, but kind of, they were taking the word quiet marketing, right, and using it for, well, and not necessarily, what they'd learned was off me, but they weren't really crediting me or mentioning me. So it was just a little sign for me to go, well, what are you going to do? Like, okay, first of all, I want to say I don't have rights to this name. Like, I realize that. It's just, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it still was a bit like, I didn't feel good about someone being out there sort of using the terms that they got from me, and like beyond the word quiet marketing, and just not really properly referencing me. And so it kind of made me go, you know what? Why don't you just claim that word? Why don't you just claim that phrase? Why don't you just like stand in this and like pull your finger out and actually do something, Yeah. And I'm like, because then it doesn't matter who mentions quiet marketing, who else, I see other people using it now. And I'm just like, well, of course they can, but that side of me that maybe is a bit like, whatever it is, competitive or just sort of like, hey, I'm like, well, you know what? People ultimately, if they go Googling that, they're going to find me now. Like, they're just going to find me. It's all going to come back to me. Now, they may stay with that person, but it's like I feel like I've laid a sort of foundation that can just be there, and it's really now become part of my, you've probably heard me talk about discoverability, Franklin. It's sort of like really a part of my discoverability approach.
Well, that's the whole part. That's the whole point of a brand, is that it is something that people can associate with you, and it is something that people can link you with. And like, there may not be legal rights attached to it, but there are certainly emotional rights attached to it.
Yeah, right? Emotional rights. I was claiming my emotional rights. Yeah. And then just to sort of answer that bit about the blogging and the, like, how this book came together, what happened is, like, I made that decision, right, I'm going to do this. And you or some people who've listening might have heard of Alexandra Franzen.
Mm-hmm.
I had been following her work for a little while, and it's all started with this idea of a tiny project. And I'm like, oh my God. And then her and her sort of business partner came out with this tiny book course a few years back. And I did the first iteration of that, but not really. I enrolled. Let's just say I enrolled, and I watched a couple of recordings. But that's all. But this time I was like, I plan or I contemplate my business 3 months at a time, in 3-month chunks via the seasons. And I'm like, right, so this coming season, the tiny book is like the key project.
Yeah.
And I did the updated version of Alexandra's course. And that really, most of that was like, I definitely needed that course. It's not a course in the way that we know it. I won't go into it, but it was like it was very light on, but very guided, like very light on content wise, but very guided, It's a nice container. And so within like about 2 months, like, I just spent an hour, I spent maybe 3 or 4 hours a week, and I'd kind of had, things on my computer and whatnot, like, these are the sort of the quiet marketing principles. And so I sort of had a draft, but there still was work in going, all right, what goes, what stays, looking at pieces of content that I'd already published, then looking at them going, no, that needs to change, and all of that. So
if I were to give the book a nickname, I would call it the Yes Book, because every time that I would turn to a new chapter, it was like, oh, another yes. It's like,
right,
this person understands me, and that was one of the things that I really loved about it. I read a lot of business and marketing books.
Yeah.
And this is one that I can say I resonated with all the way through.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll tell people is that it is not a long book, but it is not a quick read. It's one of those ones that you really want to spend some time with the principles, and it's you really want to let that resonance go wherever it needs to go. In order, I think, to get the most out of it. It's not something where you just want to flip through the content, read the words. You really want to internalize it.
Because for some people, I imagine some of the things that I say, it's such a paradigm shift that they really need to just put the book down for a little while. Like for me, it doesn't seem that way now, but just, listening to what you're saying, I'm just picturing that for some people, it's like, whoa, hold on a minute. This goes against everything that I've been taught,
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that it's short, it's concise, it's there's a lightness to it in terms of digestibility or something, and it's reflective of all the other things and offerings that I do.
We had identified a couple of sections of the book that we were just going to touch upon in this particular discussion. The first one we talked about was creating your own definition of success. Now, this was one of the early chapters. In fact, was it chapter 1?
Yep.
And I remember looking at that and going, I think I should have written this book, because that has been something that I've been talking about for years now with the people that I work with, is that success isn't something that you can buy a blueprint for. It's something that emerges from you. It's something that comes from the inside out and not from the outside in. Can you talk a little bit more about, your inspiration and your experience around that?
Yeah. In 2017, a lot just seemed to happen in terms of my business, and some big shifts. And it's really part of this journey where I really started to question everything and start to go down a different path. But one of the, measures of success was, this whole, 5-figure months, 6 figures in 6 months, all of this sort of carry on, which, initially I didn't think it was carry on. I was like, I want that, but I didn't go into business thinking that way. So in hindsight, it's something that I adopted these success measures. My success measures were time freedom. My success measures were having, maybe working 4 days a week, maybe, and maybe not very many hours a day. They were my true success measures. So, I did sit down and went, what have I been doing to myself? Especially I had got to this point where it was just so deflating that I'd had this income goal for every month. And then it was like, didn't get it again, didn't get it. And then you see, along with all of this, hypey thing about, how much you earn in a month or a year, was this whole thing about, like, you just got to believe it.
Yeah.
You just got to tap it out. You just got to clear your money blocks. You just got to, and so I did a bit of that, right? And then really I just came to the conclusion, I'm like, you know what? Like, I can't live on a prayer. Like, I believe in visions and, all of that.
Yeah.
But I can't be just living on a prayer here. Like, you've got to have solid messaging. You've got to have offerings that make sense. There's certain things that you must have, like an audience perhaps who could buy from you. But a lot of people, they get wrapped up in all of these teachings and they don't have any of those things. They're just believing for it, and they've, imagining that, they've watched The Secret and somehow like a $10,000 check is going to arrive in the mail or something,
keep thinking about it.
Yeah, so that was all happening in 2017 for me. And I was like, you know what? No more income goals. And it felt like a big deal for me to say that to myself. And I'm like, no, I just can't do it to myself anymore. But what I will do instead is I'm going to have a different kind of goal, maybe something that does lead to income. So it was like community. My goal just became, I'm going to build community.
Yeah.
I'm going to build community. I also had listened to gosh, I keep forgetting this guy's name, but he did this. I came across this presentation he did on, oh my God, the word equanimity keeps coming up, and that is not the word. It might come to me, but basically it was this word that describes preeminence. That's it, preeminence.
Yeah.
You being your people's most trusted advisor, even before they start working with you.
Yeah.
And so this message that he had for me was like, wow. And I took it one step further, well, in my mind, to like, even before they join your list.
Yeah.
Because the current day teaching is, no, just quick, get them on your list through a lead magnet. And then you do a nurture sequence. Not my thinking's like, no. I'm going to nurture now. I want to be in a position where they're very clear who Dani Gardner is. So if I eventually do end up in their inbox, they're not going, who's she again? Delete or spam,
Yeah.
So yeah, they're the sorts of things that started me on that journey. And, I was just having a chat to my husband before coming on this call about what we were talking about, and this whole idea of, I was sharing with him that, I realized that I had to come up with a definition of success that allowed me to feel successful every day, not just someday. And interestingly, his response to that is probably very common to a lot of people. He'd be like, well, that's a really tough call. And I went, no, it's not. Let me share some of what it is. And he started hearing it. He went, oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It made sense, right?
Yeah. And I've actually just been updating my definition of success. So I might just share that. And I just want to say that what I'm also bringing into this is it's sort of like a grounding self-care sort of a statement, something to keep me anchored. And I've inserted a new piece about this that relates to, I don't know if you're familiar with the gene keys, Franklin. Yeah. So I have the 64 gene key, which is quite prominent. Is it 63 or 64? The one that needs to get comfortable with confusion.
Yeah.
So this is my sort of slightly updated definition of success. So it's to create sacred space, which I can do every day. Like it may mean an uncomfortable conversation with someone.
Yeah.
So I can have that, but it could happen. It's available to me. Approach my life as a work of art, which includes business, right?
Yeah.
Share honest messages. And the thing I kind of mentioned in the book about that, I said share meaningful messages, but I've changed that to honest, just because there needs to be an honesty from me that I genuinely want to share this right now. I'm not just doing this because I'm like, oh, Dani, you haven't shared anything in a while, you better share it, like a really authentic. But what I share in the book is like, notice how instead of going, I want to impact millions, I'm just saying share, which relies on others then.
Yeah.
No, this is up to me. Share honest messages. This is something I can decide every day. Be organized. That's a really big one for me, like I just feel successful when I'm organized, And daily walks in nature, that's also a really important measure of success. It's something I can choose every day. And this is where the gene key things come in, or the one gene key, allow confusion to exist.
Yeah.
I've just inserted that side. How would my life change? Right?
So there's your success manifesto.
Yeah.
That is really great.
Yeah.
What a great exercise.
And then I have a process where I'm reading this every day.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to be recording it so I can just actually listen to it when I go for a walk. Yeah.
Wow, that is really cool. What a great thing.
It's just like an anchor back,
Yeah.
you know.
The other part of the book that we were going to talk about kind of dovetails onto what you just were talking about, and that is about trusting your own ideas. And I think that for a lot of people, that's not an easy thing to do. We have a tendency to second guess ourselves and to, wonder if we're really on the right track, especially when other people don't immediately get what we're talking about or understand it. Kind of in the case of that you had to find a way for your husband to understand it just before this discussion, where you had to put it in terms that he would get it. But it was still, your idea. Talk a little bit about
that.
And I'd love to hear any insight that you have about it.
Yeah. So what I want to say is, first of all, that the second part of that chapter heading, or that thing I really like to say, is so freaking important. It's like, trust yourself even when everyone else is doing the contrary.
Yeah.
Now that's like it's a pattern interrupt, right? Because it's like gives you permission, but it's like, oh my God, are you allowed to do that? So it kind of brings up a bit, right? And it could be applied to so many things in life, like outside of business. But yeah, if everyone's doing it like that, shouldn't you be doing it too? Like, what's wrong with you? So everything that has happened in my journey has ultimately come back to becoming acutely aware of what effect something is having on my body.
Yeah.
And so I describe myself as, I feel like I have like an alpha mind, like very driven, very type A personality, living in a highly sensitive body.
Yeah.
So it's just like, my mind wants me to do things and go places that my highly sensitive and very attuned body, really more to the earth, is going, nah. So it brings me back to earth. So, one of the sort of recent thing, or fairly recent in the last couple of years, was in relation to having a newsletter. Right. So I'd already decided, I'd been down the track of having a freebie, right?
Yeah.
And what I had noticed is, especially because I had multiple freebies over the time, and in some years, like multiple throughout the year, like it could change like month to month, or just a new one or something. And what I found is the freebies that went really well. So I grew my list really quickly that week because of that, because I was mentioning it in a Facebook group. Yeah. Ultimately also had the highest unsubscribe rate down the track.
Interesting.
So I am someone who really likes to know, if I see an unsubscribe, I'm like, I want to go, where did that person come in and what happened there? And, I like to understand the journey. Yeah. And ultimately, through looking for enough of these unsubscribes, I was like, and looking at the people who were my favorite clients who weren't even on my list. They were just like, they came to work with me. I want to work with you, Dani. They were very clear about that. And I'm like, how important is this, Yeah. And then I was like, you know what, I'm not having a freebie. You can join my newsletter, right? And that's it. But then I went a step further and went, no, but you can't just join. You need to answer a couple of questions, right?
Yeah.
So, and they were essentially market research questions. They were like, things like, how did you find out about me? What's going on for you right now that you want to change? What do you want help with? That kind of thing. So it felt a bit cheeky, right?
Yeah.
Like, and one client told me once that she was talking to a friend of hers who knew about me, and her friend said that I was obnoxious for and I laughed. She thought she was like going to really offend me. I just loved that. I thought maybe I am obnoxious, but I just thought I kind of thought it was cool to have that reaction on someone, but really I think what that's saying is it's almost like, how dare she? But maybe I would like to do that too, but I don't think I can, I won't allow myself. So I did that for a while. Like I had that, to fill out this form. And then just about 18 months ago, I was starting to get really irritated about some of what I was seeing. And I talk about looking for wisdom in irritation. That's one of the chapters of the book. And honestly, my best business decisions have come from that,
Yeah.
So I'd had this feeling like, I just don't even want to have a newsletter. Or one to people who are not clients. And then I remember I was having a conversation with, I'd already had this in mind. And then I was just like, I said to my husband, can I just talk something through with you? And I was talking about this, like, no newsletter. And he's like, oh, yeah. He's like, I just been reading this book. This guy was called Doberman Dan.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's totally like that. No, don't have a freebie. Yeah. And anyway, we had this bit of a talk, and it was enough for me to think, yeah. And I went over to my computer and I took away my option to just join my list. And I basically said, if you're interested in joining my list, just sign up just enroll in a course or a class.
Yeah.
And guess what? Course sales went like that.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. The thing that I would look at is that is not obnoxious. That's audacious.
Yeah. Audacious is a good word, isn't it?
Audacious is there because you're just saying, you know what? I already know that I'm not getting what I want out of the newsletter that's free. And it's not doing the things that I really would love it to do. So I'm going to just offer it to people who already know who I am.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. That was one of the things in the book that I just underlined 6 times and said, I really love this.
Yeah. And what I want to emphasize about that is I didn't know if that would be a good idea, if it would work, All I knew is that my body wasn't happy. And when I took away that thing, the joy that bubbled up from me, like I felt amazing. Like my body just gives me this instant feedback. It was like, Dad, that's the one. All I knew is I'm just going to follow my body, the wisdom of that, and see what happens. And I thought maybe I'll end up, reversing it at some stage. I don't know. But I'm just going to, I think it's this experimental mindset that I have now.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't always have it, but I'm like, let's see if that works, and it doesn't come from a place of, so I can get this outcome. It's like, so this body feels better.
That's the outcome.
Yeah, that's the only outcome I'm after, really. And because of that, it just works.
Yeah, that again is another kind of an inside out indicator that I would point to for people is how does your body feel in this? And that was actually when I decided to stop doing my weekly email. It was a similar thing. It didn't feel good. It just didn't feel good. There was so much physical resistance that I would release it on Wednesday morning, and I remember waking up at 3:00 on Wednesday morning remembering I have not written my email this week, and just having so much internal pressure about it. And when I just finally said, I can let go of this for a while, and the relief that I felt was so palpable. So there's so much truth to what you're saying. And a lot of the folks who are attracted to this program tend to be highly sensitive, me included. And our bodies tell us the whole truth about what's going on.
Yeah.
Dani, I could talk to you for hours. And this is the book that I recommend to everyone that I work with now, as a way to understand marketing differently, uniquely, and in a very affirmative way. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what else is on the table for people in your part of the world.
Yeah. So a big part of my business is the tiny courses that I've created, and they really provide some of these key pieces that I think are important for quiet marketing in order to be able to live this way, really. And so one of them is organize your message, which it does what it says. It helps you organize really what you know, what your perspective is in relation to these things that the people you want to work with want, like the evolution that they want, the change that they want. So that's quite an important course. And then there's other ones about discoverability and creating a tiny course and stuff like that. So they're always available. And then in terms of people being able to work with me more directly, then I have 2 3-month containers. One is called the Tea Room, which is where you get more like input from me. Like you can submit work to me and I, give feedback and direction, and it's that kind of thing. And there's we meet twice a month in a small group, that kind of thing. So it's a really lovely space. Yeah. And then I ended up creating this other thing, another container called the Anchorage. And for the most part, it was for people who had done a round or maybe 2 of the Tea Room. And now they're like, they still want to stay, in the realm sort of thing, but they don't want as much support for that season. So with that container, it's like a once a month meeting as a group, and there's a community associated with that. So it can also be a good entry point into my work, or a good entry point like if someone has done a tiny course or wants to do one, especially if they want to create a tiny course, or with the messaging, it's sort of, they can bring that with them, especially into the Tea Room, and then I can mentor them with that, because it's really the people who are in these containers that have access to any sort of one-on-one work with me now. So
wonderful. And people can find information about all of this at danigardner.com. It's DaniGardner.com. And I'd recommend that you go right there after listening to this episode. If someone were putting in a Google search that ended up finding you, what would they be putting in the search?
Well, I know what they are currently putting in the search.
Okay.
I am found via Quiet Marketing.
Yeah.
I am found through some human design searches, human design and business.
Yeah.
And also in terms of growing your business without relying on social media is another way that I am found.
Very good. So if you're looking for Dani, those are some things, those are some ways that you can know that you're ready to find her if you're searching for those kinds of things.
That's a great question. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I've learned a lot again, and it's really finally nice to meet you in person, even though it's over Zoom.
Yeah.
I appreciate you being my guest today, and I'm really hopeful that your book will reach many, many more people.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Franklin.
Thank you, Dani. Thanks for listening to Your Own Best Company.
If you enjoyed the show, would you do me a favor and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast host? If you really love it, leave me a review or share it with your circles. If you feel like your career is reaching a dead end, or you're feeling a deep sense of dissatisfaction in your work right now, I help people discover their gifts and then find or create new opportunities that are the best fit for their talent, experience, and lifestyle. Email me at coaching@franklintaggart.com for more information. I also help people start, finish, and launch creative projects, and I offer an ongoing marketing mastermind for solopreneurs and freelancers. More information on these programs and services can be found at franklintaggart.com. Thanks again for spending this time with me.